This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. I'm excited about this video because I've wanted to make it for over a year now, but I got sick, had to quit the channel, had to have 4 operations. I'm back though, 90% normal now, but I really wanted to talk about affordable 10 gig networking for your home and for small businesses. I finally implemented this just a few months ago, and it's pretty exciting. But we'll talk about who really needs 10 gig networking. Does everybody need 10 gig networking? No, but maybe it depends on your circumstances of what you're trying to do at your home. For businesses, if I had a small business and I had 10, 20 people, I would definitely put 10 gig networking in. It's a lot less expensive now than it ever was before. And so we'll just get into what you need for 10 gig networking, the cost of it and everything. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the switch just for a minute. So this is TP-Link. Now this is an 8-port switch. For your home, you may only need a 5-port switch. The 5-port switch is much cheaper. It's $265 for the 5-port switch, $399 for the 8-port switch. Now in my case, I wanted an 8-port switch. I have 4 servers that I wanted to connect to this and a couple of workstations. And I'll get into how that increased my productivity at my house to have this 10 gig switch or to go to 10 gig networking. The next thing you're going to need is a network card. Before I talk about the network card, one of the reasons why I'm excited about this particular networking, and let me just show you the actual unit, is this is RJ45. When I first started looking at 10 gig networking, everything I was seeing took FPS. And if you don't know what that is, I'll talk about that a little later when I get to the slides, because I don't have any of those parts here. The only thing I have that's an FPS is this 10 gig card. And you'll notice right here, this silver here, how deep that is compared to this RJ45 card. But I didn't want, the problem is the FPS hardware, you have to get adapters, and a lot of it was commercial stuff that was selling. Sometimes commercial switches are loud. I didn't want a loud switch. Now this particular switch though, this TP-Link, does have fans on it, but it's not very noisy at all. Now the 5-port switch does not have fans on it. But as far as the card goes, let's talk about the card for a minute. Now, the theme of my channel is to make things practical, affordable, and easy. When I can, I buy used. Now, obviously, this switch isn't used. It's a newer switch. It's only been out maybe a year, maybe a little longer than that. But these 10 gigabit cards, you can get them on eBay for anywhere between $35 on up, really. So $35 to $75. Most of my 10 gig cards that I bought have been around between $35 and $45. You can get them brand new for around $100. And I will talk about the different brands of these 10 gigabit switches because it can make a difference, but most of the time not. But I'll get into that as we go along. Now again, like I mentioned, it's R45, and that's R45. If you don't know the term, I don't know how people are watching this, and that's why I'm going to get into the FPS cables as well. R45 is what most houses, if they have networking, and most of your networking cards that you have today that are in your computer are R45 connectors. And that was the whole thing. And I just want to explain too, when I moved into our house, it's about 20 years ago, I used to be in IT, and I was in IT back then. And so I had our house wired. I had every room wired in our house for 10 gig, not for 10 gig, but RJ45 cables. And at the time, I went ahead and put in Cat5e. That was really what was most popular back then. And so the distances I have in my house are anywhere from 100 feet to 200 feet, just depending on if it's upstairs in the master, because everything's in the basement. And so your cabling also is important. As long as let's say your house already has Cat5 in it. A lot of homes don't even have networking going through their house, but as long as it has Cat5e, you'll get near 10 gig performance. And I'm going to show you the next cable up. You'd want to get Cat6 or Cat6a, and I'll talk more about that as well. And I'm going to go over on installing this card, because some of these cards that you get from eBay, they don't come with the drivers. And I went on my Windows machine. I got a used Dell 10 gig card, and I went on to Dell's website, could not find anywhere to get the driver for that card. And so I'll go over on how to install the driver for that. It's actually pretty easy. Let's go in, and I'm just going to go to the computer, and I'm going to show some speeds that I'm getting. I do have a file server where I save everything. So I do everything off my server, my video editing, but I also have other applications. I have a file server, I have a backup server, I have a home networking server that's just for our home files, and we have a small business, and so that's where my business files are out. The first server I talked about is actually my video server. I wanted to keep my video server separated from our business server and our personal home stuff. And then I have a Proxmox server. And I'll tell you what, Proxmox is where this really made a huge difference for me. But let's just go ahead and jump on the computer. I'm just going to show you some speeds. And the reason why I'm doing that, let's talk for a minute. Who really needs 10 gig networking? If you have, say, a Proxmox server, maybe a Plex server, it's going to work so much more efficient to have a 10 gig server. You don't have to. I obviously been running Plex for years now, and was operating with a 1 gig network switch like everybody else. But there was a time where I decided I didn't want Plex on my file server anymore, because I've been running TrueNAS. It was FreeNAS back then, so I was running Plex on my FreeNAS server. I decided to remove it off my FreeNAS server. It was a headache to update or Plex on a FreeNAS or a FreeNAS server back then. Now they have TrueNAS and TrueNAS Core, which is the Linux version, but I still would prefer to keep my apps running on Proxmox separated from my file server. That's just my personal choice. It's not that you have to do that, especially now with TrueNAS Core. There are so many apps that you can run on TrueNAS now locally on the file server, more than ever before. But I still like to keep mine on a separate in my Proxmox server. So anyway, so video editing, yes and no. If it's one person, I've been video editing on my server now for years, and I really haven't seen a big, huge difference in the speed. Now, this is the whole thing, though, is that I don't really edit a lot in 4K, so it might make a difference in 4K. I've seen some presentations where it didn't make that much difference, maybe 8K, but what really made the difference was my Plex server. So let's jump on the computer. We're going to go ahead and test some of the performances of the 10 gig network and see where maybe your performance might lie as well. Okay, so here I am. This is my desktop, and this is my Linux desktop. We'll go to a Windows desktop as well, but I'm just going to show you the speed in which I'm going to copy a 32 gig file over to my video server. So let's just drop that in here, and we'll take a look at the speed that's going on here and here. Now you can see how fast that is going. Now everything I said was hardware, so we're taking a 1.3, 1.4, so we're definitely at 10 gigabits going to my server. Now I did introduce at the beginning, and it'll slow down here right at the end. It'll get a little less than 10 gigabits. But one of the things that I was trying to say at the beginning of the presentation is that your 10 gigabit speed is related to your hardware. Now, one of the reasons why my server is getting 10 gigabit speed or a little less is because my hardware is really fast on my server. I have a 12 gigabit controller card for my hard drives. My hard drives are 12 gigabit, and so it's very efficient copying big files to my server. So let's take a look at this desktop here. This desktop here is on my Proxmox server, and this is my Plex desktop server, and it's also running off an NVMe drive. And when I copy this over to here, because now we're at 600, and it kind of averages 6 to 800 while I'm copying this. So see, we're at 700 right now. We're starting to peak out. So again, everything is hardware related when it comes to your networking. Now, one thing about my Windows machine, it's a test machine, and I was a little disappointed in Windows because I'm only getting 300 to 400 megabits per second. Better than it's better than 120 megabits per second. So I don't know if it's the card, the driver for the card, that's causing that. I've obviously seen demos where on their Windows machines they get close to that 10 gigabit per second speed. So again, I don't know if it's a driver problem, or if it's the card. I don't know what's making the difference there. Remember that my house is wired with Cat5e, so even though it's wired with Cat5e, I'm still getting great transfer rate, because my server, which is next door on a 50-foot line going into my my 10 gigabit hub in my office, then going through my house to my server room, which is 10 gigabit, which that wiring is Cat5e, and I'm getting 700 megabyte transfer rate to that NVMe drive. So you may not get exactly 10 gigabit going through Cat5e, but you're going to get close. Okay, really quick, I'm on my Windows desktop. The reason why I'm on my Windows desktop, I just want to talk to you real quick about, like I said, it was a little disappointing. I get a little over 400 megabytes per second transfer speed. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the card or the driver. And maybe I should have tried a brand new card to see if it made a difference. But if you buy a used one, they don't come in with any drivers. And so what I had to do, and I'll leave a link down below on how to use Snappy Driver. So I used Snappy Driver to go find the driver for the card that I got from eBay. When you load it up, it's going to find everything on your system that it has a driver available for it. Doesn't mean that you have to load all these drivers up. If you don't have any drivers, if all of your drivers are fine, then I wouldn't load all these just because it says there's an update to it. But I use this, so you have to scroll down pretty far. You want to scroll down until you find your network card. So I have a HP Z440, and it uses an Intel network built-in network card, and so that's right here. And what it was is I couldn't. It didn't see my network card that I got from eBay, so I had to go here. See how it says updates are available, 50 driver packs. You click on that, and then what it'll do, then you're going to click on show only updates, this PC only. Okay, if you do that, then it'll just show any updates. Now then what will happen is you go down and you'll find network cards, and I already there, you won't find it in here because I already added it to Snappy Driver. And so once I added it to Snappy Driver, you just hit accept, and then it's not showing up now because I already added that driver to the Snappy Driver database here, and then I updated it. So let's just say that this was the card I bought from eBay, but this is my internal card, but just say then it pops up. So you just click on this here and then you just hit install, and mine doesn't show up because I've already installed it. But that's one way of installing a driver that you get from eBay, because they don't come with the software. And I went on, it's a Dell 10 gigabit card, but I could not find a driver for it anywhere on Dell. So that's why I'm just wanted to show you this real quick. And then with Linux and in Windows, so even though it's a Dell, if you look over here, it's a QLogic. It's using a chipset from QLogic, but and it's showing two of them because it's a 2-port gigabit switch. And I didn't know which one it was, so I just did this to both of them. But you want to right mouse click on that and go to properties. You have to do this with any 10 gigabit card that you have. Go to advanced, and you're going to want to find jumper packs or jumbo packets, and the default is 1514. You want to make it 9014. Okay, and then if you want, like with me, my speed and duplex, it'll be on automatic or auto negotiation. I always put it on. I always just say, since I know this is a 10 gigabit and I want full duplex, I just put that there. You don't have to do that part, but you do have to change your jumbo packet to get 10 gigabit speed. And so that's why I wanted to show you this. And again, I'll have a link down below that shows you how to use Snappy Driver if you've never used it before. Now with Linux, it's not that big a deal, because Linux, all of their drivers are baked into the kernel. So I didn't have to install on any of the cards I've used, whether it's Dell, Asus, whatever ones I've bought, and it's automatically just worked because the drivers were in the kernel. Okay, in Linux, you just need to edit your 10 gigabit settings as well. So I'm just going to right mouse click on my edit connection here. And you can do this through the GUI, or you can, if you're a Linux guru, you can do it from the command line. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that MTU is set at 9014 or 9000. Originally, when I saw stuff, it was 9000, but then I looked it up and they said 9014. Now, again, this is you don't have to do this. I always like to put mine on. Take it off of automatic and put it on manual, so that it's for sure getting 10 gigabit and full duplex. But again, that's just me. You don't have to do that part. But you definitely, in order to get your 10 gigabit speed, this has to be changed to 9014 in both here and in Windows. So that the mistake that a lot of people make when they put in a 10 gigabit card, they don't realize they have to change the jumbo pack in Windows and the MTU size in Linux. Okay, let's talk why this is affordable 10 gig networking. In the past, 10 gig networking was really expensive, and really the only people that could really afford 10 gig networking were businesses. But today the home consumer can now afford it. Now, when I say affordable, for some people it might still seem kind of cheap, but from when I first started to trying to get into 10 gig networking, it's a lot more convenient now, and price-wise convenient. So let's just talk really quick. At the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned this SFP, and these are the SFP connectors right here and the cabling. there's two switches that you can get in the 10 gigabit. There's more than two because there's managed and all kinds of stuff like that. But as far as adapters go, you have these SFP adapters, and I wanted to stay away from that because everything in most homes is going to be this RJ45 connector, and so you could find used switches on eBay for really good prices, but they were all this SFP. And so in the last year, maybe 2 years, they started coming out with affordable 10 gig RJ45 home and small business switches. So let me just show you this right here. This is an SFP switch. Now this switch today is really inexpensive. It's 170 bucks. But the problem is now you got to use those SFP adapters, and the SFP adapters and cabling is more money than an RJ45. And so, and this right here is actually an adapter where you can plug that into an SFP switch and then plug an RJ45 cable into it. Well, it's just a hassle, and then these range from $30 a piece to $50 a piece, sometimes even more. And I just didn't want to hassle with that. And I know that some people with their home labs will buy those SFP switches, but I just wanted to stay away from it. And so let's just talk real quick about the TP-Link one. And I'm not saying that TP-Link is the only option out there, and I don't make any money off of this. They're not a sponsor. I'm not big enough to have sponsors yet. But this is what I found for me to be the most reasonable solution to 10 gig networking in my house. So this one here starts at $269, and this may be all that you need. Maybe you don't. I mean, most people don't need all of their devices to be 10 gig. You may just want your servers to be 10 gig to make things more efficient. Which that was definitely my case with my servers, and especially my Proxmox server with Plex. And so this is the route I went because I needed more ports than 5, and so this is $399 or 400 bucks. And actually I bought 2 of these, and I bought these a year ago, but I just never set them up because that's when I was deathly ill. And anyway, the reason why I bought 2 of these, the 8-port one in my office is probably overkill, but I do so much experimenting that I wanted to be able to have enough ports to play around with, because I usually do have 3 to 4 computers hooked up in my office at a time. Right now I have 6 because I have 2 servers that I've put together and are testing. I've got a file server and a backup server, and they're both going to be 10 gigabit networking. And then I have one of these in my server room, and when I say server room, it's kind of a closet storage area that I put all my server stuff in. So now this card right here is the one that I showed at the very beginning, and I got this card for $40 on eBay. And like I said, if I was to put this in a Windows machine, I'd probably have to use Snappy driver to get the drivers installed. And let me just talk about the pricing on eBay. Most of these cards go for $35 to $55. They go higher than $55 used, but I don't want to pay more than $55 for a used NIC card, because that starts to get closer to a brand new price. But you have to be really careful when you're looking for these cards. You can't just plug in. You can plug in 10 gig NIC, but then you're going to get the FSP cards as well. And so make sure you don't order one of those by accident. And in this particular case, if you were to put in, let me go to the next slide. Now, because this is an Asus, I don't know what their model numbers are, but you could put an Asus 10 gig and see if it's this shortened here. It doesn't even say that this is an RJ45 adapter here, but I just happen to know that it is. But if we go to this next one, this one here is a Dell Intel, because they use, both Dell and Intel use this X540 chipset. Again, this adapter doesn't even say that it's RJ45. It kind of frustrates me when people put stuff on eBay and they're not descriptive enough. But this is a dual. The T2 means the dual port. But you could just type in You could just type in 10 gig X540, and it would bring up Intel and Dell cards that you could look at. Now this one here is $50. A lot of times too, on some of these eBays, they'll say make offer. I always make an offer if they say make offer. They may only take $5 off it. $5 off is $5. So just be careful if you're going to eBay and buy these. Now again, I didn't have to worry about the drivers in Linux, because Linux includes so many drivers in their kernel that more than likely the cards that I put in, and I don't know the different brands of cards I put in, Linux found that. But I do want you to be aware that you need to stick with the known. And I have not bought an HP 10 gigabit RJ45 card yet, but one thing you have to be aware of is now this card here, I do need to mention, this is for a low profile server, and if it doesn't come with the adapter, you may not want to buy this. So a lot of times they come with the adapter, so be aware of that this is low profile. And so in order to get this to work, you'd have to take this that locks it into the back of the machine. You'd have to take that off and plug it in, and then it wouldn't be secure. So be aware of that. But also be aware, Supermicro, there are Supermicro 10 gigabit cards on there. I do have a Supermicro server that I'm going to be retiring. And I bought a 10 gigabit Supermicro card for that, but I tried it in another system and it would not work. So I don't know if the Supermicro cards are just made for Supermicro and will only work in a Supermicro. So be careful. If you stick with Asus, Dell, Intel, then those cards will work in your desktops. So if you go onto Amazon, here's one that's $93, $92.99. Most of your newer NICs, 10 gigabit NICs, are going to start around $90. And this is an Asus one, but you can get an Intel, you can get other brands. If you just type in 10 gigabit NICs in Amazon, most of them are. You have to be careful again not to get the FSP, but get the RJ45. And they range from $90 to $110. They can be more expensive than that too, but I wouldn't pay more than $100 for one if I was buying brand new. So again, let's just go over the costs here. The 5-port is $269. The 8-port is $399. And again, these aren't the only options out there for 10 gigabit switches. These were just for me, when I did my research, these were the ones that I liked and that were convenient for me. The 10 gigabit switches used are going to be between $35 and $55. I wouldn't pay more than $55 for a used NIC. Now, what I have here says I have the 5-port costs, and what I'm including in this is, let's say you needed 2 cards, and let's say they're $45 each. That's where I come up with $359. This includes the $269 plus 2 NIC cards. Now, if you're going to fill all 5, or you wouldn't probably be able to fill all 5, but let's just say you did with 10 gigabit cards, it'd be $449. It'd probably be more around $400, because you need one you may need one open switch to attach to another switch. So the 8-port cost, again, this $489 includes if you were to buy 2 used NICs for $45, and then if you were to fill them all up with NICs, you're talking $759. So I hope that makes sense. And then the cabling, again, it just depends on what your needs are for there. My house, like I said, I wired my whole house when I moved in 20 years ago with Cat 5e. But your cost of the Cat 6, it just depends on how long your cables are, what your needs are, or if you need any cables at all. You might already have Cat 5e that you can use. So I hope that's helpful. And again, you have to decide whether it's worth it to you. It was worth it. I honestly didn't know how much more efficient my Plex server was going to run. It's just incredible how much more efficient that it runs, how fast it is when I fast forward through a video, rewind a video, and then of course sometimes in our house we can have 3 people watching Plex on 3 different devices, and then we may have friends and family that I've shared my Plex with outside my house, could have 2 or 3 people watching. So sometimes I could have 5 to 6 people on my Plex server at the same time. And man, it has just made it so efficient. And so efficient even outside the house. If I was to go fast forward and go back on my phone, it's instantaneous. Anyway, you have to decide what your needs are, content creator, or whatever you feel would benefit you to have a 10 gigabit networking in your house. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Have a great day. Thanks. Oh, and make sure you subscribe and like the channel. It will help me out. Thank you.
Now that was easy peasy.